Welcome back to Horror Movies.
In a few seconds, you're going to listen to a frightening tale narrated by me. Fear awaits you. Watch out and take care. The movie opens with 3 police officers waiting for backup on a homicide mission. Seeing that backup isn't forthcoming, Carl Mørck neglects waiting and makes a move towards the building, with the 2 others trying to call him back. They, however, get to move in cautiously with him since he's the lead. Inside the house, a body sits lifeless on a chair, having been shot at a close range in the head. Just when they plan to move out and wait for the others, an intruder shoots them down. Carl catches a bullet in his shoulder, Hardy catches one in the spine while the other gets a headshot. In the next scene, Carl is healed up but not completely. He goes to the police headquarters to get reassigned to work, but his boss, Jacobson, won't send him back to homicide. First, he lets Carl know that none of his colleagues, except Hardy and Anchor, are willing to work with him because he always finds faults with them. He then transfers him to a newly funded department by the Ministry of Justice called Department Q, where he'll be closing 1 to 2 cases weekly. Jacobson then directs Carl to his office at the basement, to carry out his paperwork. Carl first visits his best friend, Hardy, at the hospital where he has been rendered useless and can't walk again. He takes it hard on Carl because of this. After that, he goes to the basement where he meets Assad, whom Jacobson made his assistant. Carl tries to talk him out of the department, but Assad insists. While Carl goes through the case files, he sees the picture of a female politician, Merida Lingard, who was said to have disappeared on a ferry 5 years ago. Carl dismisses all of Assad's evidence about her taking her own life. So, they set out for investigation against the rules. Assad doesn't feel right about this and tries to ask Carl if it's going to cause them problems afterwards. The look he gets from Carl tells him he can leave if he likes. Soon, they find a witness, Lisbeth Jensen, who claims to have seen Merida and her brain-damaged brother, Ufa, on the queue to board the ferry. He says the 2 ate sausage together and later had a fight on the deck. So, Assad thinks that maybe Ufa accidentally pushed him. To prove him wrong, Carl fakes a push at Assad, who stands his ground in return. Assad is just confused at what Carl is doing. Then, Carl tells him the witness states that he later saw them in the store. So, they move to the store and find different confusing statements. A witness said she saw them leave the store together, which is where Merida probably jumped in to see. Assad shows Carl a witness's statement that says he saw Merida enter the men's toilet, but Carl dismisses it because the man was drunk. But, Assad convinces him that he couldn't have forgotten the sight of a beautiful girl in the men's toilet. She must have been looking for her brother. He adds that 2 other witnesses that saw Merida alone in the cafe can back it up. So the pieces of the puzzle add up. Ufa was used to lure Merida out before she was kidnapped by a man in a black raincoat. After she was kidnapped 5 years ago, Merida wakes up in a pressure chamber and wonders. She then starts to scream for help, but none is forthcoming. She sits down after a while whimpering when suddenly a bright beam of light is shined into the chamber. There are 2 buckets and a strange voice says, one is for the toilet and the other is for food. Merida again screams for the stranger to let her go, but to no use. He later leaves her with a note, not to hope of getting out of the chamber, and he increases the pressure to 2 atmospheres, which is double the normal pressure, until her eardrums rupture. After doubling the pressure, he tells Merida she'll only be hearing again from him after 1 year. Carl goes to the nursing home where Ufa is being taken care of since his sister's disappearance. The chief nurse first explains to them that Ufa's present state is as a result of an accident that his family was involved in while he was 8. It led to brain trauma from losing both his parents on the same day. She says Ufa drifted out of reality about the incident as if it never happened. Later, Assad plans to go see Ufa all by himself and get to know him better, while Carl goes to one of Merida's friends to investigate. She tells Carl about all of Merida's lovers except one whom she didn't get to see. So, Carl gets a list of all the participants of the Congress they attended in Sweden, and many more pictures related to the Congress involving Merida talking to men. 1 year after she was kidnapped, Merida wakes up one morning to the voice of the stranger, who then increases the pressure to 3 atmospheres. Carl soon gets a bashing from his boss for reopening the Merida case, which he says has been concluded already. Then he instructs him to close down the case. Carl, however, doesn't tell Assad the truth about this, and they both continue with the case. After having spent enough time together with Ufa, Assad takes some of Merida's photos to him to help identify the man in the black raincoat. Immediately he sees a photo where Merida is seen with the kidnapper, he becomes fidgety. They later find the name of the kidnapper to be Daniel Hales. They leave for Sweden immediately, in search for Daniel Hales. It turns out that the man in the picture is not the real Daniel Hales but an impersonator. The man must have also been the one who eliminated the real Daniel Hales 6 months later. So, they look for Johan Lundquist, who was Daniel Hales' partner for 4 years. Upon finding him, they ask about the man in the picture and he identifies him as Lasse. Lasse grew up with Daniel at an orphanage in Denmark, he says. As they attempt to leave the building, a group of policemen instructed by Jacobsen to escort them to the border appears in front of them. In the 4th year of Mereta's abduction, the stranger reveals himself to her and she has a quick flashback. He was the man she hooked up with during the Congress in Sweden. They had a one-night stand. Then he tells her the next time she sees him, she'll die. Carl has caused a huge problem already for the police department. That's why they have been brought back from Sweden. He has spent a 3 months budget in 2 days, and even involved the Swedish police in his investigation. The nursing home is also suing them for Carl and Assad traumatizing Uffe more in an attempt to use his help. Carl ignores all the accusations and just focuses on stating all he has discovered, but Jacobsen won't listen, so he suspends the two of them indefinitely. Depressed, Carl goes to visit Hardy again at the hospital. Hardy compliments him for his stubbornness, and says it is what makes Carl the best cop he has ever met. Carl gets curious and asks Hardy what he thinks about the shootout on the first day, if they should have entered or not. Hardy says they did what was right, since there could have been someone alive inside the house. Next, Carl goes to inform Assad about him carrying on with the mission to find out what has become of Mereta. Assad immediately shows him a note containing the address of the orphanage where Lasse grew up. At the orphanage, they are told that Lasse's real name is Lars Jensen and he has a history of violence. They also tell them his address has been recently found, living with his mom, Ulla Jensen, who now uses a wheelchair after an involvement in a car accident in which Lars's father lost his life. Carl later checks the newspaper he earlier found of an accident involving 2 families and discovers that Uffe and Mereta are the sole survivors of one family while Lars and his mom are the survivors of the other. A long time ago, the 2 families are traveling in different cars when Mereta as a child playfully blocks her dad's eyes while driving and they collide with an oncoming truck, affecting Lars' family. Lars begins to cook up evil for Mereta immediately after knowing she survived the accident. The day he hears about the Congress at Sweden, he asks Daniel to get him in. So, he creates a relationship with Mereta and Uffe which he uses against her on the ferry. Lars also steals Daniel's boat after pushing him into the river. Soon, Carl arrives at the address with Assad and they go in but only find Lars's mother. She tells them she hasn't seen Lars for 6 months and asks them to leave. But Carl isn't the kind of person to buy a lie. He goes back to look for Lars around the house. Lars sees them and quickly goes to the pressure chamber. First he warns Mereta that he will be letting out all the air in the chamber, which would lead to her sudden death after her blood cells explode. Then, he reminds her of the accident she caused long ago that put him in misery. When he's sure that she remembers, he goes ahead and starts the pressure leak. Carl and his partner hear a hissing sound but can't get any closer since the door is locked. So, they arrest him in a bid to take him to the station for a chat. On the way, Carl notices a lot of confusing scenes like a generator in Lars's compound even though there is sufficient power. This makes him suspect Lars and he asks Assad to turn around. Lars doesn't let them do that by hitting Carl and injuring Assad's leg to flee. Carl gives chase and accidentally notices a ladder that leads up into the chamber. He climbs up and finds things related to Mereta, and also sees her struggling with her life on a monitor. Once he sees Mereta and also realizes that she is in a pressure chamber, he calls for an ambulance and the Navy, then goes to help her. Lars finds Carl as he tries to help Mereta and tries to strangle him, but Assad comes to his aid. The Navy and ambulance arrive and take Mereta to the hospital, where she is depressurized. Carl and Assad then get back their badges on the condition that they get to call the shots of their own actions. Carl also requests a secretary and together with Assad, they make Department Q interesting. Spooked out? Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.